Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast, a podcast about how to grow your business from $100,000 and beyond in the land of the rising sun.
Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Batino, and on today's episode, we have Milosz Bugajski. He is a partner and advertising lead at Humble Bunny. And Humble Bunny is a digital marketing agency in Japan that can do both marketing in English and Japanese. And we've also interviewed the CEO, Nathan, on growing a company from 1 to more than 10 employees. And we'll have a link to his episode on the show notes. But for today's episode, we have Milosz talking about paid ads in Japan. Before we start, here's a quick introduction to myself, your host. I'm the CEO of LaunchLab. We support setting up a company and back office in Japan. We also provide affordable advisory on raising capital, IPO, and other finance topics. I also run Scaling Your Company that provides courses and sales advisory and digital marketing agency services for the Japan market. If you need help, feel free to reach out. And so before we dive in, Milosz, could you give a self-introduction, please?
Thank you so much for having me, Tyson. It's great to be here. I think you covered most of the points with the introduction, but anything to add? As Humble Bunny here in Tokyo, we are a performance marketing agency, helping brands enter the Japanese market and succeed here through things like digital advertising, search engine optimization, and e-commerce. So we are really performance-driven, really data and result-oriented, with over a decade of proven track of success here in the Japanese market. And I have a great privilege to be the partner and the advertising lead at Humble Bunny.
And I did choose Humble Bunny for this episode because I have a lot of good experience working with you guys. In my case, with my service, I do more of the advisory. So like I would coach a CEO or I would coach the marketer of my client on how to do performance marketing. But sometimes some clients, they may not have the staff who have the talents to do performance marketing. And so when they need someone, or they need to do something fast, or they need someone to do something hands-on, I would usually refer them to Humble Bunny. And Humble Bunny is actually working with some of my clients at this moment who need a hands-on approach.
Thank you so much for saying that. I'm really happy that you have such a high regard about us, and we are always happy to be the boots on the ground performance partners of yours. So a pleasure to be here as well.
Awesome. So diving in, we'll start at the beginning for some of the listeners who might be new to paid ads. But could you tell us what paid online ads are, how they work, and why they are important for scaling a business?
Sure. So paid online ads refer to advertisements that businesses buy to promote their products and services across the internet. So for example, you can think of display banner ads across the web, maybe video ads on YouTube, text ads in the search results, or maybe various ads across the social media platforms. And essentially the way they work is advertisers via different advertising platforms, like for example, Google Ads Manager or Meta Ads Manager, are able to set up the ads, set up their budgets, specify their targetings, and launch. And from there, essentially, the ads compete in an auction-based bidding systems, because of course, there are just too many advertisers bidding for similar placements. So the systems needs to determine things like, based on bid amounts, ad quality, relevance to users, which ad is to be shown. And from there, once the ads are being served across the internet, users can, of course, view them, interact with them, and then the advertisers are being billed via different pricing models. This could be, for example, cost per click, so CPC, cost per impression, CPM, so on and so forth. And why they're important? Why would anyone? Why the businesses should pay attention and really care about online advertising? I think first and foremost, we need to think about where people's attention is going nowadays, which is online. we are all spending tons of time nowadays on our smartphones, scrolling through social media, binge watching YouTube videos. So everyone's attention is directed towards those online platforms. And it becomes imperative for businesses to be there, either through their organic content or through the paid ads. An additional point, why is it important, specifically with online advertising versus, for example, offline, is the targeting and measurability options that the online advertising offer. So if you imagine like a billboard or a banner outdoors, it's really hard to tie it back to your business results. But online, you have much more data and much more visibility about how a given ad performs, how to optimize it, how to A/B test it, and then further scale it.
I'm not involved in the day-to-day anymore, but I have an English school chain and I have a Japanese language school chain. And in the beginning, how we accelerated the Japanese language school very quickly was through paid ads, specifically Facebook and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show the power of the targeting, I targeted the English teachers for our rivals, for our Japanese language school, for our English language school's rivals. And at the time, which you can no longer do, you could put in this big corporation's name and you could say employed by or likes. Yeah, I specifically targeted and created ads that said like looking to step up in your career, learn some Japanese lessons. And I was able to target them and get quite a lot of English teachers to study at our Japanese language school.
That's a perfect example. Yes.
It's the first time I've admitted to it publicly, but we don't do it anymore. And one other part, I think the ads, I think you mentioned about the online auction format. One follow-up question is, you explain why they had the auction? What would essentially be a high quality ad from the eyes of maybe a Facebook or Google?
Right, that's an excellent question. I think to answer that, first we need to realize that platforms want to create the best experience possible for their users as they can. And if they keep serving ads that are really mismatched to people's interests, that are really misaligned, maybe they are in some way just leading to landing pages that are misoptimized, this just creates a bad experience and no one wants that. So Meta will definitely sort of punish advertisers that do not align with those rules. So essentially, an ideal scenario will be where the whole experience, from viewing the ad creative to clicking the ad to the landing page, to viewing the product or service on the landing page, up to the purchase, is smooth, is well targeted, reaches the person that is genuinely interested in that product and or that service. And essentially, the advertisers that are the most aligned with that intent, with that purchase intent, are being rewarded with, for example, the cheapest cost per clicks and the best results from their advertising as well.
Gotcha. So if you're using a paid ad platform and maybe you're not targeting someone who's like your direct target, but maybe kind of like an offshoot, and maybe your website may not be specifically targeted to them, therefore having a lower conversion rate, that person will likely pay a higher cost per click, right?
That's correct. To give maybe an example for that, if you are in a B2B lead generation space and you have a service specifically for, let's say, landscaping in the Tokyo area, really niche down, and you want to generate sort of leads for that business, if you target specifically long tail keywords that express that search intent with landscaping in it, with Tokyo in it, and probably some other specific elements of your service, and you are exactly aligned, all your landing pages and then your services are aligned with that, your cost per click is going to be much, much lower.
Actually, I do have an example based on helping my clients. But one is, let's say you're an English school and you're an English school that targets adults. And in this case, you might target the word English conversation, ikaiwa, but sometimes you'll be paying a higher rate because there's also adults searching for this term. And so you'll have people who visit your website, even though you are in English school, you might not be a match for that exact target. You're going to be paying, you're going to have a lower ad quality score, which results in you paying a higher amount per click.
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect.
And I think the last question, I think just for context, is how can an agency like yours help someone with paid ads rather than maybe doing it themselves?
I think the biggest area where agencies can help is they take a lot of guesswork out of the equation and a lot of time that need to be spent on sometimes not needed, not necessary A/B testing and optimizations that are basically already discovered for the agency. Because let's say at Humble Bunny, we have tens of clients across many different industries. So we are able to collect insights and analysis and great data for all those clients so that whenever we start working with someone, we do not start from scratch. We already know maybe what kind of keywords will tend to work for that brand, what kind of targeting strategies, what kind of messaging strategies might be better. So there's no waste of the ad spend budget on unnecessary testing. We hit the ground running and we are able to get the results really, really quickly just because of the expertise we are able to bring. Otherwise, it can be really, really costly to spend months, if not so many years, in such a complex market as Japan for a business to really discover what would be working for them. So agencies can save a lot of time and costs for businesses.
And if I have to give a concrete example, for my clients, I think if they have around, or in my case, when I was doing the Japanese language school, I would say 50% of my time was dedicated to marketing. So I had the time to learn how to do all of these things myself. Spent 3 years learning it. But for my clients who maybe have maybe 5% of their time to spend on marketing, I usually recommend they end up outsourcing it. Because if you only have 5% of your time or even 10% of your time in marketing, it's not enough to learn how to really get the most out of paid ads.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Maybe one caveat to that is nowadays the AI and the optimization on the platforms are really making it quite simple. So on a small scale, with a limited time, you might be able to get some traction, but to really talk about scaling and bigger success and real profitability on a bigger scale, yeah, the agency is just essential, I would say, or developing in-house resources for that matter. But
yeah, and I think if you're making from the ads, maybe like 200,000 yen, 300,000 yen, maybe even 500,000 yen, it would probably be better to do it yourself. But if you're making 1 million yen plus a month, let's say using an agency can help you get more efficiency out of that.
yeah, definitely. And it doesn't make if you're operating in that range that you mentioned, 200, 300, 400,000 yen, you need to be mindful that very likely the agency costs will be in multitudes of your ad spend budget. So achieving a positive ROI on this kind of project would be extremely hard. So yes, in that case, would be better to try to carve out some of your time and try to figure the ads on your part, at least at the beginning.
And the company that I introduced to Humble Bunny that I helped, it's they're definitely making much more than 1 million yen per month in revenue.
Yeah, most of our
that.
clients actually enterprise, big company to enterprise level. So that's definitely most of the case. Yes.
So I think now that they have kind of a better context of what paid ads are, how they work, what is considered a quality paid ad, and just kind of being good versus, let's say, great at paid ads. Let's move on to maybe just understanding maybe the Japanese online advertising landscape. So I guess what are some unique characteristics of Japanese online advertising market for those that maybe might be familiar with a foreign one, but not the Japanese one?
Yeah, I think to start with, Japan is the third biggest online advertising market in the world, with huge ad spends being spent here in the market. I think reaching well over 300 billion yen now. And the online part actually in Japan also coming up to over 40%. So with anyone familiar who living in Japan, seeing all the ads, for example, in Tokyo subway or across the city, imagining how much of the ads are in those public spaces, actually 40% of the all ad expenditures are online. So huge market here in Japan. And what makes it really different and unique, I would say, is number one, there are a couple of local platforms such as Line or Yahoo Japan, which are unique. Specifically about Yahoo and about search market in Japan. Actually, search part of the online ads in Japan is the biggest part of all other media platforms. So compared to social, compared to display, search is the biggest one here in Japan, and it's divided between those two big competitors, which is Google Search. I think currently around 75% plus of the search market here. And then we have Yahoo. I think Yahoo is coming up to like around 18%, maybe 18, slightly over that, but that's very unique. Definitely companies need to keep in mind that to really capitalize on the search engine marketing, Google itself might not be enough. Line as well, being a super app with all its features, Line News, Line Weather, Line Fashion, payment options, so on and so forth, is a huge platform for advertisers in and of itself, allowing to reach over 70% of total Japanese market, which is again very unique and very characteristic feature here in Japan. A couple of other things I would say culturally and psychologically, very unique market for advertisers. For example, seasonality and timeliness plays a huge role. We just had the cherry blossom seasons here in Japan, where, for example, companies like Starbucks really capitalize on it through their seasonal menus. And what follows is their online advertising strategies. So whoever scrolls through social media during spring in Japan, there will be tons of ads related to seasonal offerings. Similarly with the Shinsei Katsu season, people joining the companies, moving to new apartments, starting a new life. Huge characteristic of Japanese market for big online advertising campaign to take place during that time. Yeah, I think those are the main ones. Maybe a couple of others is really tech savvy and also mobile savvy market, including the older generations, really huge chunk of the market being really accessible online compared to some others. So it's not like maybe older generations are not adapting the technologies. It's really prominent across the demographics, and it's really a mobile first market as well. So for all advertisers here, having a mobile first strategy is really paramount, I think. But we still see a lot of companies entering the market and not having the mobile first presence still. So
yeah, I think especially if you're targeting Japanese women for B2C, I've been seeing like 90% in some cases of mobile usage rates. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer. I'll just add one more thing. For Yahoo, like more in the B2B space, if you're targeting people in their 50s, sometimes 60s, like, like the executive, the older generation, sometimes Yahoo search can actually outperform Google search ads. Hello, listeners. I'm excited to announce my live cohort course to help you increase your sales in Japan. Many foreigners struggle to turn first meetings into second meetings because they lack a sales pamphlet that follows the standard format in Japan. Even if you have a good first meeting, your internal contact will hand over your current sales pamphlet to the decision maker, and they'll take one look and say they don't get Japan. My live 4-session cohort course will teach you how to make a sales pamphlet in English using the standard format in Japan. You will receive a sales pamphlet template, more than 10 examples from Japanese companies, and a lot of feedback, so you can end the course with a sales pamphlet that gets more meetings and therefore more sales. Getting one extra deal will more than pay off the course, so joining is a no-brainer. You can find more details of the course at scalingyourcompany.com/sales pamphlet. And we'll have a link in the show notes. You mentioned about line advertising beforehand, but could you tell us a little bit about what line is and line advertising in Japan?
yeah, definitely. Line is, I think you can think about Line as a super app, many different features. I think mostly it's used as a communicating tool, but also it has a lot of social media feature. We will find there like a feed, as you would find on, for example, Instagram, but also it has various peripheral sort of sub apps and sub areas like Line News, Line Weather, payment options, like Line Wallet. The list just goes on and on. And from the advertiser perspective, when you first open it up and look under the hood, it really looks like Meta in many cases. So the targeting options there, the demographics, behaviors, in-market audiences, it's very, very similar. But the more you dig deeper into the platform and try to optimize your campaigns, the more differences usually you will find. What I would really recommend is to take a holistic approach to Line and really treat it as a separate platform, because traditional, like let's say conversion campaigns or sales campaigns, are only a small portion of what you can do on that platform. Usually the best results we see online is with multiple channels going on at the same time. So for example, CPF type of campaigns, which are cost per friend, that are aimed to build your friend community, which are like, I guess, followers online, are great to build that community. Then you can remarket, you can direct message those users, you can build sort of like a newsletter communicator style of marketing in there. Of course, your organic presence online from standard organic posts, and then paid advertising on top of that. And with that holistic approach, it can really, really work well.
If a person was using Line ads, what would be a good target market for that?
This really depends on a specific business and a specific goal. You will find all kinds of demographics, all kinds of personas within that platform. So what you really need to answer is the question for your business, who you really want to target. And then within the options online, you will be able to find the solutions matching your criteria. So for example, creating custom audiences, creating lookalike audiences, building custom interest and behavior and demographic targeting options. All of that is possible. All of that works really great. Usually I would recommend using Line a little bit more towards like the top of the funnel part of the marketing strategy, towards brand awareness, website traffic. It can work great for conversions as well, but usually broader targeting is a go-to online, in my opinion.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing that. So I guess for a company that's considering to do online advertising in Japan, what do you think are some of the first steps they should take when considering to start online advertising?
I really strongly believe that before even starting to advertise online in Japan, each company should take a step back and really evaluate their all the other factors in their business. So for example, how well are they localized in the Japanese market? How well is their stores or landing pages optimized for the conversions? Have they done a lot of activities in the area of conversion rate optimization? Very often we would see companies with, let's say, 0.5 conversion rates, with really small margins, with no cross-selling or upselling strategies, no ways to really increase average order value, maybe with no ways to really decrease churn, any of those sort of business infrastructure elements in place. Jumping into advertising without those parts figured out is just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. Rarely can it be profitable. So really figuring out this base layer of really strong localization, really strong conversion rate optimization before pouring money into advertising is really crucial. And then what comes next is, of course, a very thorough market research. There are some excellent tools specifically for the ads that will allow you to benchmark. For example, Meta Ad Library allows you to just find ads of your competitors or other businesses in your niche here in Japan and see specifically what successful ads have they been running on Instagram or Facebook.
I was surprised how much they have there.
Right? It's
really good.
Right? And most people don't actually use that, which is a huge missed opportunity. And it's completely free. So I would encourage everyone to check it out. But then from there, I guess once the localization is done, once the market research is done, first steps will be to really, I think, adapt a curious mindset and a testing mindset and approach it with, of course, creative ideas, but then have in mind that it's not going to be instantaneously really successful, or the returns on ad spends are not going to be great. So it's going to be a longer play, and it really requires optimization, patience, A/B testing, learning. And with that mindset, I think anyone can be successful here in Japan with online advertising.
Humble Bundling, I know works with more established companies. So I was going to give more of the startup example, but I guess like when you start online advertising as a startup, I think for B2B companies, sometimes people ask me like, should I do paid ads? And usually my answer would be usually no in the case of a startup, because one, it's you actually probably need to focus more on sales and talk to the customer more to reach product market fit. And then when you reach product market fit, then you can use the acceleration of paid ads to get the most return for your money. But if you don't know who your target market is, even no matter how good the marketer is, it's they can do a lot, but they can't create miracles. Is a better way to describe it. So yeah, so for the startup founders, really try to focus on product market fit or understand who your customer is, then consider doing paid ads. And also, it's maybe your issue might be product or it might be sales before you need to do marketing. And so I guess, yeah, next, I think you dived a little bit in the importance of understanding Japanese culture and advertising. And could you share maybe any cultural nuances that has maybe significantly impacted an ad campaign?
Sure. Yeah, over the years, we have came across many of those. For example, we work with this Italian luxury fashion brand. Actually, we continue to work with them for well over 2 years now here in Japan. And in their search advertising, a really interesting insight that we extracted was a difference between brand name searches in Romaji, which is the Romanized alphabet, and katakana, which is the Japanese alphabet. And for Japanese companies, it can be even more. It can be hiragana, it can be kanji, and each one of those perform surprisingly different. Search volumes, click-through rates, cost per clicks, all the way down to returns on ad spends for those specific keywords are very different. And very often the brand wouldn't even have an idea that they can target the Japanese version of their brand name and completely miss out on that opportunity. So that's one big example.
I remember you also gave the Starbucks example earlier as well. In the US, you might have Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, maybe Mother's Day, but cherry blossom season is unique for Japan.
Definitely. And I think Japan just has so many more of those small pockets of timely campaigns you can run. Very similarly, like just recently, I was moving into a new apartment, and companies like Big Camera and Yodobashi or furniture companies really capitalize on this February, March, April season of people moving to big cities like Tokyo, starting a new life, starting their new job. And the digital campaigns promoting sort of shinseikatsu, as they call it, sales are huge here in Japan. So that's another example. I think to give another one from the B2B space, we tested some manga style in our advertising across social media, and that really outperformed some of other types. So it shows that taking the localized approach, using some of the cultural elements, has huge potential in Japan.
That's very interesting. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing more cultural nuances of unique, let's say, methods of doing paid ads in Japan. And so I think you've worked with a lot of foreign companies entering Japan, but what are some common mistakes that foreign businesses entering Japan make in online Japanese advertising?
I would say the biggest ones would be around generally lack of cultural understanding, understanding the importance of the cultural nuances, failing to adapt the advertising strategies like to align with Japanese cultural norms. So anything around psychology, social elements, sociology that stands behind any successful campaign. Oftentimes, I think companies consider translation to be a good first step for kicking it off in a new market like Japan, which is not nearly enough what's really needed. I would say it's really paramount to go above and beyond in terms of transcreating all the content, really thinking of what works in the minds of Japanese consumers, what will trigger the purchase behavior here in the Japanese market. And oftentimes this requires completely new approach to the whole offer, products or service and how it is presented, and spanning all the way through the landing pages to the offer itself, product, price, promotion, all the marketing elements, and then moving to the ads, and of course communicating via the ads through the creative and messaging to match those audiences. So localization, I know we already discussed that, but it's just such an important thing that I think companies entering Japanese market miss. And they think that copy pasting some of the elements from other markets or successful elements of other campaigns and just translating is going to be enough. 99% of cases, it's not enough to do that.
Yeah, I think they underestimate its how important localization is. And I think one thing is they don't understand how often Japanese people have been sold to by foreigners, because Japan is, I think it's still the third biggest market in the world, say third or fourth. So the sales deck course that I made, it's actually how to localize your sales deck, your marketing or sales deck for B2B sales. And the key component is the person you meet, they'll be like, oh, what you're making is pretty interesting. But if they show your, haphazard localization to their boss, the boss is going to be like, well, these guys aren't serious about Japan, and door closed and no sale.
Yeah, definitely. And I think definitely companies overestimate how the foreign appeal, they would think it can carry them forward in the Japanese market of, for example, using their bolder, maybe more flashy, let's say, foreign model in the ads, those kind of appeal points, which without the understanding of how valuable in Japan are those elements of produced in Japan, designed in Japan, really local elements, as well as risk aversion and social proof here in Japan, those things. So without really an approach that takes into the consideration transcreating the brand and localizing it, and also developing the social proof elements here in the Japanese market that overcome that risk aversion, yeah, without that, no advertising campaign can really take off here in Japan market, I think.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Scaling Japan. In addition to serving as your fine host, I also provide advisory and coaching services to business owners who want to 2x, 5x, and even 10x their business. So stop holding your company and your team and your employees back, and let me help you and your company scale. Find more information at scalingyourcompany.com. Now back to the episode. And I think this is more of a general question for the listeners who are thinking about getting help. Could you maybe tell us the differences between maybe hiring a specialist, maybe building up a team like, entry-level employees versus maybe freelancers versus ad agency?
Maybe to simplify it, of course, each business wanting to advertise in Japan has those kind of couple of paths to possibly consider. And I would say it really depends. It comes down to the budget, and it comes down to your maturity here in the Japanese market and the success you have had up to this point. So for companies that are just starting and are yet to sort of have a proof of viability of their product really matching the market and really getting some traction here and getting some initial sales, definitely an agency or an internal team is an overkill in that case, right? I would really encourage actually anyone to try to do it themselves. Nowadays, it's much easier than it might seem. It's not as daunting as many may think. Really, nowadays, automations make it much easier to get some initial traction going. Or hiring a freelancer is always an option. The downside of freelancers, of course, the lack of predictability. The results can differ, so on and so forth. And then from there, once there is some good foothold in the market, I would say that's a great time to consider an agency. And of course, with agency, you can hire all the experience that they have, all the what we discussed previously. So cutting the cost, cutting the time, and just scaling those results profitably and quickly thanks to the agency's experience. And then the long-term play, usually, which can stretch into decades sometimes, is building the internal team. which is of course the most cost-consuming, time-consuming investment into like recruitment in Japan with the shortages in the talent pool. Crazy challenge, of course. Big investments, not only in recruitment itself, but also training, operations, maintenance of the team internally. So I would say the most sort of balanced approach for mid to long term might actually be the agency, because it still gives you the flexibility, massive focus on returns on investments. And then it's sort of easy to transfer from agency to in-house, because you can always get that knowledge that have been acquired from them, the data, and move it internally. Much more easy than, for example, from freelancers. So yeah, a lot to consider. I would just look at the budgets and the stage of the business here in Japan.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really good summary. I would also agree that in the beginning, it's best to do things yourself as much as possible. And the main reason for that is if you don't know what you're doing yourself, how are you going to know the person you're hiring is good? If you don't have a clear idea of how to market your own product, the person that you hire, they're going to struggle to sell your product as well, because if you don't understand your unique advantages, you're going to have a lot of expectations for this marketer to come in and, let's say, start getting results quickly, but you don't have the infrastructure. The road isn't paved.
That's a perfect analogy. I love it. Yeah.
And then working with the agency, you get to really learn best practices, because with the agency, they want you to be a customer for, like 1, 2, 3 years. They don't want to have a lot of random customers at the agency. They prefer just to work with people long term, so their communication costs don't increase. But with the freelancer, the freelancer is trying to maximize their hourly rate, and some will do a good job, but at the end of the day, they really just want to take the jobs that will pay the highest. And so I think with the agency, they're more incentivized to educate you as well. And if they're not educating you, then that also brings the question: are they actually the right agency for you? And I think we've talked in our interview with Robert Purse, we talked more about choosing the right marketing agency for you. So you could check out that episode for those who are interested. And I'll throw out one more idea. I'm also kind of that in-between person. So like doing it yourself and agency, I'm usually that in-between person. So you'll work with me. I don't want to do your marketing hands-on. I won't do it actually. But if you want someone to check out your webpage, if you want someone to check out your setup for Facebook ads or help you choose what platform to use, I usually do that on an hourly basis and to get you more success. And then when you get more success, I would usually typically introduce you to an agency. But I do like that. And so my next question would be, so I think you've helped companies who have done it themselves, who have gotten some success, but you've helped them scale up. But what are some strategies for scaling up advertising after seeing some initial success?
Getting a little bit technical here, I think the best approach to scaling nowadays with digital advertising is to really separate your setup of your campaigns into your ongoing testing and your scalable campaigns. Usually you can call them like business as usual or broad targeting, open targeting type of campaigns that you can really scale up. And what we love to do at Humble Bunny is really lean on the automation rules for scaling. So what this can mean is, for example, if a business has a very specific cost per action, cost per purchase, cost per lead determined, we would set up an automated rule that would increase the spend of a given campaign once that goal is being reached. So without us having to manually edit anything, those campaigns keep scaling step by step incrementally. That's also very important, not to do too big of a jumps of scaling, because once you start opening up the targeting and reaching wider audiences, usually naturally the returns on ad spend slowly start to decline. So it's important to scale it gradually, and the automated rules really help with that. So the budgets only go up once you are reaching your cost per purchase or cost or ROAS, return on ad spend goals. And then the overarching rule for scaling is that to really understand when the ads are profitable for your business, to really dissect your margins, your whole pipeline, whether it will be e-commerce or for B2B leads, your lifetime value, your churn, and really dissect if the ads are making sense for you and is the profitability really there, and only from there start to incrementally increasing that budget.
And for e-commerce, what would you say is a pretty good return on ad spend?
So interestingly enough, we just did a bit of research at Humble Bunny. We are checking with companies, not specifically for e-commerce, but in generally for companies, foreign companies here in Japan, if they're doing better in Japan than they're doing abroad. And we found out that 97% of companies actually are having worse returns and performances here in Japan that they would be having in their home markets or abroad. And this also connects to returns on ad spends. It really depends on a specific niche or a specific industry. Even within different product lines, it can vary significantly. But a lot of goals that we are getting from businesses is around 200 to 300%. So on each yen invested, getting 2 to 3 yen back is the goal of many businesses here in Japan.
And what are some trends that you're seeing in Japanese online advertising?
I would say big ones would be video, of course, taking over any of the other mediums, especially vertical video performing extremely well. Maybe a small tip for anyone who is running actively ads, YouTube Shorts right now being one of the most excellent placements. But in general, video, specifically vertical video, an excellent medium that is on the rise. Things like social commerce, really environments that help you connect your things like your Facebook store or Instagram store with the ads that allow you to purchase right in there with seamless experiences without leaving that platform. Definitely going to be much more prominent. Similarly, advertising within the e-commerce platforms like Amazon and Rakuten without leaving those are going to be on the rise. This also connects to some issues that platforms like Google and Meta will face, which is with privacy, with tracking, with attribution, with data, where platforms want to track users that leave that platform. With Amazon and Rakuten, I think the ads are going to be on the rise just because all the shopping behavior happens right there on those platforms. And of course, those two are huge in Japan with no privacy issues, So huge opportunity there. And of course, everyone on those platforms already is in the purchase mindset with very specific intent. So targeting of those ads is excellent, and it's only going to increase. I think cross-channel marketing and AI, those two will be also on the rise. Cross-channel, I think definitely media mixes and really evaluating how different channels support each other, what's really important, sort of following the Pareto principle. I think now with a little bit of economic downturn, maybe companies will be really cutting off the channels that are not really working or producing specific results and really dissecting what makes sense within the media mix. And if something has a little bit of fluff, it's sort of justified through creating a touch points for the brand, creating engagement, awareness, traffic, but not really contributing to, at the end of the day, to the actual business results. I think it's going to get much more stricter to cut it off from the media mixes. And then AI, of course, making it much more easier to optimize the campaigns, create the copies for the campaigns. So I think we're going to see much more of that going forward.
And I think one cool company I've seen through my mentorship at 500 Global, I've seen two kind of cool companies. One is called Crescendo Labs, which for anyone doing line marketing, one cool thing they do is if you want to contact your customers, you usually send a line blast, but they have a software that based on, so you have a user, you send them maybe 3 messages, and they'll check what time of day the user checks their line message, and they'll send your line messages based on when they actually check the app. It works in Taiwan. I'm curious if it will work in Japan, but having kind of like games where you can send like a slot to your customer and like they'll play the slot game and it gives them a coupon online. They've been gaining traction in Japan, so curious to see how that turns out for them. I'm going to try to get them to talk specifically online marketing for 45 minutes. But I think they're doing pretty well, so they're a bit busy at the moment. So I guess, yeah, thank you so much, Milosz, for taking the time to talk about paid ads. But do you have any final thoughts, and where can we find you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great talking. If anyone is interested in the topic of advertising in Japan, I would really encourage them to check out our blog and our resources at humblebunny.com. We have a lot of great content. I think for anyone starting and trying to do the ads themselves, you can pretty much find everything you might need within our resources, blog, newsletter, so on and so forth. So yeah, I would really encourage to check those out.
And maybe just kind of like what type of clients, what would be an ideal client for you?
So yeah, if you're a company looking for performance marketing support here in the Japanese market, want to enter the market, not really sure where to start, or are struggling to get the returns on ad spends or the returns on your online marketing that you want in Japan, feel free to reach out. Again, humblebunny.com. We will be happy to talk with you.
What are some brands that you're currently working with or have worked with, if you can mention them?
Right. We have an extensive portfolio of brands we have worked with, ranging from Etro, the Italian luxury fashion brand, Ralph Lauren. We work with APA Hotels. We work with many B2B companies, Materialize, for example, medical 3D printing devices here in Japan, so also really specific, and generated great success with lead generation there. Lots of e-commerce, premium apparel, premium fashion brands like Reima from Finland, Finnair, the airlines, great SEO projects as well, JLL, in the real estate space. So across the board, I think within the space of SEO, e-commerce, and paid ads, both B2B and B2C, we can claim a pretty good portfolio. And we'll be happy to talk with similar brands that have big ambitions in the Japanese market that we could help out.
Cool. Listeners, if you reach out, just tell them you heard about them on the Scaling Japan podcast. And then I think they'll be very happy. And maybe we could get a Humble Bunny to come on again and share more wisdom about marketing in Japan.
Thank you so much, Tyson.
Thank you, Milosz.